Hey everyone, welcome back to class. This week we're talking about external world skepticism. So we're going to talk about what skepticism is and go through some arguments for external world skepticism. And then we're going to look at an argument about at G.E. Moore's attempt to prove that there is an external world and that we do have knowledge of the external world. So first things first, in this set of slides, we're just going to go through skepticism. We're going to talk about what external world skepticism is, what it means to be skeptical or a skeptic about something, and then look at three skeptical scenarios, three arguments meant to show that we don't actually have any knowledge of the world outside of us. We don't have any knowledge of the external world. And then we'll bring up a new set of videos, a new set of slides, and talk about G.E. Moore's proof of an external world. So, what do we mean by external world? Well, the external world is everything that exists outside of your own mind. So it's everything in the world external to your mind. So your thoughts and your feelings and your memories and your emotions and all that kind of stuff are not part of the external world. That's all part of the, I guess you'd call it the internal world. It's all part of your mind. It's internal to you and your mind. But tables and chairs and other people are all part of the external world. Your friends and family don't just exist inside your mind, they exist outside of your mind, in the world outside or external to you. So other people are part of the external world. Inanimate objects like tables and chairs are part of the external world. Animals and plants are part of the external world. And your own physical body is part of the external world. And that's weird because your body is you, arguably. And so it's weird to say that your body is external to you or exists outside of you because it's part of you or it is you. Your internal organs sound like, by definition, they're not external. They're not external to you. And they're not external to your body. But your internal organs, like your spleen and your liver and your lungs and esophagus and all that stuff, is external to your mind. Your liver doesn't exist inside your mind. Your liver is a real thing in the physical world that exists outside of your own mind. It's out there in the world. And in that sense, it is external in for this conversation, for this sort of philosophical discussion. It counts as external because it's not part of your mind. So any physical part of your physical body is part of the external world. It exists outside of your mind. And you find out about it using your senses, your eyes and ears, nose, mouth, touch, all your senses. That's how you find out what organs you have and what your body looks like and is shaped like and all that kind of stuff. What your leg feels like when you hit it, you find out through your senses. And so it's external to your mind because it is a physical thing that you discover or find out about through your senses. And anything meeting that description is external for our purposes here. So your hands are part of you, the way we normally talk about you, but they're not part of your mind. Your hands and feet and legs and spleen are not part of your mind. And so therefore, they are part of the external world. They exist outside of your mind, inside your body, but outside of your mind. And they are therefore part of the external world. So things in the external world are sometimes called external objects. They are the objects that exist out in the external world, or they are the objects that are external to your mind. An object in this sense isn't just inanimate object. It's maybe entity would be a better, broader term, but External object in this sense includes living things like plants and animals and other people. Your friends and family are external objects. That doesn't mean you should treat them like objects in sort of the normal sense that we say that. That would make you a bad person. But they are external objects in this very specific philosophical sense because they are entities that exist outside of your mind. So that's what the external world is. It's the sum total of everything that exists outside of your mind. So the external world to you, or what counts as the external world to you, is different slightly than what counts as the external world to me. Because you are part of the external world to me, because you exist outside of my mind. And I am part of the external world to you, because I exist outside of your mind. But you are not part of the external world to you, because your mind does not exist outside of your mind. Your mind is your mind. Something can't be outside of itself. So I am not part of the external world to me, but I'm part of the external world to you. You're part of the external world to me, but you are not part of the external world to you. So each person's external world is slightly different because each person's external world contains everyone else's mind, but not their own. Your mind exists outside of my mind. Your mind isn't like a figment of my imagination. So your mind is part of the external world to me, and my mind is part of the external world to you. So now that we've looked at what the external world is, what is external world skepticism? Well, skepticism about anything is the view that we don't or can't have any knowledge whatsoever about that thing. So let's say moral skepticism or skepticism about morality says that we can't have any moral knowledge. We can have all sorts of beliefs or maybe all sorts of opinions, depending on your view of metaethics, which we'll talk about later. You can have beliefs or opinions about what's morally right or morally wrong, but we can never have moral knowledge. We can never know for sure what's morally right and what's morally wrong. None of our moral beliefs qualify as knowledge according to the moral skeptic. That is what moral skepticism is. It's the view that we can never have any knowledge about morality. If you are, say, a science skeptic or skeptical about science, then you think the methods of science can never give us knowledge. We can never have scientific knowledge. We can never know which scientific theory is true, which is something that some people historically have believed because science is based on something called induction, where you look at a bunch of cases and conclude what laws must apply to make that case true. And there's always the possibility, however small, of getting more data later that breaks the theory. That's always possible that you'll get data in the future that breaks your theory. And so, as long as that possibility is there, science skeptics have said, you can't really know for sure that your scientific theory is true because you can't rule out the possibility that some data down the road will break your theory. That's, I don't know that, I don't think science skepticism is a popular view, but historically, some people have argued for it. And so you can be a skeptic about lots of different things. But external world skepticism, or a skeptic about the external world, says that we can't have any knowledge about the external world, or at least that we don't have any knowledge about the external world. So it's the view that you don't know anything about the world outside of your own mind. External world skepticism is the view that you don't know anything, that no one knows anything about what exists outside of their own mind. So external world skeptics think that you don't know that tables and chairs exist. You don't know that your own hands exist. You don't know that your friends and family exist. You don't actually know for sure that any of that is real. Your own body, your friends, your family, tables and chairs, that there are birds, none of that counts as knowledge. You might have beliefs, but the external world skeptic says those beliefs do not qualify and cannot qualify as knowledge. So, why on earth would anyone believe that? Why would anyone believe that you can be, why would anyone believe that you can't know that birds exist? You can't know that there are tables and chairs in the world. You can't know that you have hands. You can't know that your friends and family are real. Why would you think that? Why would anyone think that you can't have knowledge about that? Well, everything we know about the external world ultimately comes from our senses, right? Uh, I said eyes, ears, nose, mouth, sense of touch. That's how you find out about things outside of your own mind. You know what your face looks like because you've looked at it in a mirror. You know what uh, birds sound like because you've heard birds. You have seen tables and chairs. You've felt tables and chairs when you sat on them. You've heard the noise that they make when you sort of scoot them across the floor. And so you found out about tables and chairs and birds and your friends and family through your senses. You know, or not to, say anything the skeptic would be upset by. You believe that your friends and family exist because you've heard them speak, you've seen them, you've maybe felt them when you like high fived or shook their hand or whatever. You have sensory experience that tells you that these people are real, or that your hands are real, or that tables and chairs are real. And it's all coming from your senses. That's where all of your knowledge about the world outside of your mind comes from. That's it. Everything you know about the world outside of your mind comes from your five senses. But our senses are sometimes unreliable. There are illusions, both audio illusions and visual optical illusions. There are hallucinations. Uh, your senses can deceive you sometimes. They're not always completely trustworthy. They're not always completely reliable. But if we can't trust our senses, if, let's say, it turns out our senses are completely unreliable, well, then we can't trust any of our beliefs about the external world because we can't trust any of our beliefs that were formed by sensory experience. If our senses are unreliable, then anything we learned through our senses is also unreliable. Any information we got through our senses will be unreliable information if our senses are unreliable. So, our belief that chairs exist is based entirely on our sensory experience. If our sensory experience turns out to be unreliable, then our belief that there's a chair is unreliable and therefore doesn't count as knowledge. And so there are several what we'll call skeptical scenarios that are meant to show that we can't be certain that our senses are telling us the truth. They're meant to show that our senses are, in some sense, unreliable, that our senses could be wildly misleading, and therefore we don't have any knowledge of the external world. So these skeptical scenarios include Descartes' evil demon, which we'll talk about. They include dreaming, which we'll talk about. The brain in a vat scenario, which we'll talk about, and is basically the Matrix, if you've ever seen the Keanu Reeves 1990s action movie. And also Boltzmann brains, which we're not going to talk about, but is an interesting case that I encourage you to Google. Basically, something, something, quantum, something, something. A bunch of particles could spontaneously form a brain. How do you know you're not one of those brains? If you make certain assumptions about how long the universe lasts, most brains will be spontaneously generated in space rather than actual people. How do you know you're not one of those? Statistically, you probably are. That's a very brief overview of the Boltzmann brain thing. But if any of that sounded interesting, I encourage you to Google it. And if you have any questions about it, please let me know. But we're going to start off with dreaming. And I'm going to stop this video here so we can have one clear what is skepticism video. And then I'll start this up in a new video and we'll talk about dreaming. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video.